Hey guys, today I'll be reacting to Is learning German really as hard as they say it is? This is gonna be a really interesting topic, and I think German language is really hard. So let's get into this.
Learning German can be a very rewarding experience that can fill you with pride, a sense of accomplishment, and bring you lots of joy. Or it can crush you, destroy your soul, and leave you hopeless. And that's without ever even getting to the grammar.
Oh,
Maybe a little dramatic, but pretty much that.
interesting.
Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel. I am Donnie.
And I'm Aubrey.
And we are two Americans currently living in Germany and sharing all of our experiences living and traveling throughout Europe. I have had a life goal of becoming bilingual, and I just knew that moving to a foreign country and diving headfirst into a new language would force me to achieve that goal. We also were given different requirements from the German government if we wanted to stay here long term as to how much German we would be required to know in order to be given that privilege. As monolingual people, we had some ideas of what to expect when learning a new language, but what has our experience learning German actually been like? And would we recommend others to do the same? Well, that is exactly what we are going to talk about today in our video, Expectations versus Reality. Learning German in all of its brutality.
Let's see.
Normally, this part of the video is where I give the disclaimer that our experiences are specific to where we are from and where we live now. But this week, that isn't the case. Yes, our journey of learning a new language is specific to us, and everybody learning a new language will have variations of the same experience. But when it comes to learning German, well, I think Mark Twain summed it up nicely when he wrote his paper, The Awful German Language. In it, he writes, "Surely there is not another language that is so slipshod and systemless, and so slippery and elusive to the grasp. A person who has not studied German can form no idea of what a perplexing language it is. The inventor of the language seems to have taken pleasure in complicating it in every way he could think of. Even Germans themselves have a saying, Deutsche Sprache, schwere Sprache, meaning German language, hard language. So if you're learning German or any other language, let us know your thoughts in the comments below if your experience is similar to Mark Twain's or our experience."
We both technically studied Spanish in elementary school and middle school, but then in high school, I switched to Latin, whereas Aubrey stuck to Spanish. Aubrey also then went on to minor in American Sign Language in college, but neither of us are even close to bilingual. According to Dialects.com, less than 1% of American adults today are proficient in a foreign language that they studied in a US classroom. That's noteworthy considering that in 2008, almost all high schools in the country, 93% offered foreign languages. So we aren't unique in this fact, and The Atlantic tries to describe part of the reasons for this could be the fact that in America, we learn foreign languages in non-immersive ways. There is already a teacher shortage, and trying to find teachers is hard enough, much less those that can speak more than one language, or even political reasons that hinder funding for these programs.
All of this to say, we didn't know what it takes to be fully bilingual or even what that experience must be like to have more than one language floating around in your head. When we arrived in Germany, we were given specific language proficiency requirements if we wanted to stay here long term and get permanent residency permits. Based on our visa type, I would have to achieve only an A1 level of German, and Donnie would be required to achieve at least B1 German. These levels of language learning aren't really used in the US, and therefore we had no idea what they meant. They denote levels on the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, Learning, Teaching, Assessment, or CEFR. This is a system to help and describe language achievement for foreign languages in Europe that is becoming more commonly used in other parts of the world. But for us and our lacking language skills, this gave us direction and rough timelines for what we thought it would take to learn German.
With having no knowledge of this scale, I just assumed that if the government was requiring me to achieve a B1 level to gain long-term residency here, that probably meant I would be pretty fluent at that point. Immediately after moving here, I signed up for an integration course at our local Volkshochschule in order to get me up to this level in just 6 months by taking classes completely in German, 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. In essence, I thought that in 6 months, I would be a fluent German speaker and would have achieved my goal of finally becoming a bilingual human. Well,
I
I
bet
had
it's
read Mark
not.
Twain's warning where in the same paper he also wrote, "My philological studies have satisfied me that a gifted person ought to learn English, barring spelling and pronouncing, in 30 hours, French in 30 days, and German in 30 years. It seems
Oh.
manifest then that the latter tongue ought to be trimmed down and repaired. If it is to remain as it is, it ought to be gently and reverently set aside among the dead languages, for only the dead have time to learn it."
That's funny.
Another big assumption
Yeah, I don't think 4 hours a day would help you learn the language fast. But I think if you're dedicated enough, you can. I really don't know. I don't think I would be fluent too in just 6 months. Maybe it will really take me like 3 years if I study it like 8 hours a day. I don't think 4 hours really is good time to learn the language. And I'm sure it will be so hard to pronounce it. Like, really hard.
we had moving to Germany is that we expected to move here and learn some in the classroom or online, but a lot more through immersion. We have mixed feelings on whether or not this really has been the case. On one hand, we always have German radio on in our car. When we go to the train station, we hear announcements in German. We can flip the TV on and watch German television, and those types of things give us much more exposure to German than what we would be getting if we lived in the US. However, in terms of
Yeah,
actually speaking it, we have found it quite difficult to feel immersed in the language in our
I
daily lives.
In
bet.
our minds, immersion would mean we would come across many situations where we interact with people that don't speak any English, and we would really be forced to speak German and learn it quickly that way. However, more often than not, we find Germans speak English with impeccable abilities and seem to prefer to
Oh,
speak in English with us rather than struggling through us speaking German to them.
that is
You can
nice
see
of
from this
them.
map that 56% of Germans self-reported they can hold a conversation in English, and honestly, that seems a lot lower than we expected, especially when compared to neighbors like Austria, Denmark, and the Netherlands. There are definitely parts of Germany that have fewer English speakers than others, particularly outside of the cities or in East Germany, for example, but we also know a lot of Germans who can hear we are English speakers and like the chance to practice their English with us, or like we mentioned, they already speak very good English and aren't
Wow.
used to many foreigners coming here and speaking German, so it is actually easier to just switch to English. We don't fault anybody for that, and we appreciate when people
Yeah,
do help us in English if we don't know
definitely.
the German. But we have learned the importance of immersive learning and seeking out opportunities for it ourselves.
For any of you having the same problem, no matter what language you are working on, a great solution for this problem is actually the sponsor of today's video, Busuu. Busuu is a language learning platform that teaches the world's most popular languages and has a community where you feedback with how
Way and not just learn boring description, you will start learning for.
So
Starting
what did
from
we imagine the
scratch.
process of learning German would be like? From our limited experience with trying to learn other languages, we just assumed there would be lots of memorizing translations for words, maybe some verb conjugating, and some minor grammatical differences. I thought learning the new throat noises would be the most difficult part. We never put
It's
any thought into
not?
the fact that a language may have completely different grammar, rules, or structures. And I don't just
Ah.
mean putting a comma in different places or capitalization differences. I mean the structure of formulating your thoughts and ideas into sentences is completely different.
The structure of the German language is extremely different from English. A good example of
Oh
what we mean is the
man.
way that verbs are used in German versus in English. I'm not going to dive into a
Really?
German grammar lesson here, but where in English, if you have two or more verbs in a sentence, you will have them towards the beginning of the sentence. However, in German, you will have one at the beginning and just throw all the rest of the verbs at the very end of a sentence. So the sentence,
What?
"I would like to go walking today," in English, directly translated from the German translation, would be something like, "I would today like walking go." There are also verbs that you split in half and
That
have
is
half of the word at
so
the beginning of the
interesting.
sentence and the other few letters just thrown at the end of the sentence. Different cases, formal and informal speech, so many commas, and it just goes nuts. All that to say, it
Oh
didn't take long for
gosh.
us to realize that learning German is not just simply translating words, but learning completely from scratch how a language works.
I bet. Oh my gosh, now I know how hard it is really to learn their language. Man, there's like people who commented before that no, German language is not that hard. You can learn it in 8 months. I don't think so. That seems really impossible to achieve. And now that they talk about it, I don't think I want to try to learn the language because I might just go crazy. Good thing Germans know how to speak English, so I don't have to worry.
We also had the rational expectation that German is German, and once we learn it, we'll be able to communicate with anybody in Germany. Well, that expectation was sort of accurate because, on one hand, we can mostly communicate with everybody in the country with the German we learn, but there are also a lot of cases in which the German we learn will not be what people use to communicate on a daily basis. So, what do
Yeah,
I
I
mean?
bet it's hard.
Just to speak specifically of Germany in this video and not include the other German-speaking regions of the world, to simplify a bit, when someone from one part of Germany speaks to someone from another part of the country, let's say somebody from the north and another from the south, there is a good likelihood that they will not be able to understand each other unless they speak to each other in a very specific version of German known as Standard German.
Basically, Germany can be divided into
Okay.
many different regions of different dialects, and sometimes from village to village and city to city, the German spoken in those places are completely different. Sometimes what is spoken
Whoa.
is even considered a completely different language rather than just a dialect of German. To be clear, this isn't just simple accent differences, although that is a big part as well, but totally different
Really?
words, pronunciation, rules, etc. To give an example, in one part of the country, potatoes are called Kartoffeln, in another, Grünbirnen, in another,
Yeah, that's
Erdäpfel,
really
and so on.
different.
Because the language is so diverse, one standard German is taught in schools, used in the media, and spoken between different parts of the country where people don't speak the same dialect just so the country can actually communicate with one another. Now, we are working on a very interesting project more in depth on this subject in which you could be in one of our videos. Just check out the community tab on our channel to
That is so interesting. I thought Germans just have one language and just have different accents, but I didn't know, and it's really surprising that you actually have different dialects. Man, that's crazy. Very crazy.
what I'm talking about. But for the sake of this video, we are just explaining the fact that we didn't realize we would be learning the standardized version of German and that there are an unbelievable amount of different dialects spoken across Germany that may be completely different and not understandable even when you have learned German.
Yikes.
So, okay. With all this talk about us learning German and our journey through this difficult and surprising language, where actually do we stand? Well, maybe we should just show you. Oh gosh, here we go. Ich heiße Aubrey. Ich komme aus den USA, aber ich wohne in Deutschland. Ich spreche A1 Deutsch. Ich lerne sehr langsam Deutsch. Ich arbeite Vollzeit auf Englisch als ein amerikanisch Sprechpathologin, ähnlich einem Deutsch-Logopädin.
Und jetzt habe ich meinen B1 Prüfung bestanden und meine B1 Zertifikat bekommen. Letztes Jahr habe ich 5 Videos ganz auf Deutsch gedreht. Ehrlich gesagt, ich bin noch nicht mit meinem Deutsch zufrieden, weil meine Akzent und Aussprache sehr schlecht sind. Und wegen des Lockdowns habe ich meine Deutsch nicht genug
It's
geübt.
impressive.
Ich verstehe fast alles, das ich höre und lese, aber zu sprechen auf Deutsch ist nicht ganz einfach. Ich möchte weiterlernen, weil jetzt ich verstehe, dass B1 nicht fließend ist, aber ich muss auf die Schule warten, bis die wieder mehr Kurse anbieten.
I'm super impressed.
So is learning German what we expected? Well, as you can see, basically everything we expected was wrong. The only thing that we did expect and the reality matched is the fact that when we speak it and we are able to have a conversation or at least somewhat communicate with someone in their native language, we feel on top of the world in a major sense of accomplishment.
We would highly recommend anybody looking to learn German or any language for that matter to do it. And if you are already in the learning phase, keep going and don't get discouraged. Let us know in the comments what your...
That was a really informative video, and I'm really impressed how they can speak German language. I know earlier I said that I don't think I can do it, but now maybe I can. Nothing is impossible if you're just eager to know. But yeah, maybe I will just learn some basic ones. But yeah, I just really think it's really possible to just do it in just few years. But yeah, see you guys next time. Bye.